whoever.
I don't want this to sound like smart, it's my job. I mean, it's what I was hired to do. I wasn't hired to be the adults principal. I really wasn't hired to be the parents principal. I was hired to be the kids principal, advocate for the kids. So each one of them's, failure or success for me.
I think some of Rob's demographics from the video, our demographics at Glenwood are very similar. A 93% poverty rate. Our kids have many challenges. They come to school with a lot of trauma that is very hard to understand if you haven't grown up with trauma in your household. And they're also the most wonderful kids I've ever been with. I'm passionate about my work because I'm sitting in this chair with a college degree because a teacher told me I should. No one in my family had one. And that teacher, despite all the challenges that we had as a family, kept saying to my mother, you've got to make sure she does this. You've just really got to make sure. And so with that college degree, I chose to become a teacher and try to do that for all of the children that I encounter in my work. And for me, my passion for the kids at Glenwood is that every one of those children has the opportunity to fail or succeed, and our community depends on their success. So I feel like every day when I go to work, every single thing I do for every parent, for every kid, for every teacher, for every family, for every community partner, it matters so much to the future of Evansville.
And I would agree. At my high school, actually, we receive a lot of Tamler students because they've gone to Cedar Hall, and then they've gone to Glenwood Leadership Academy, and then they come to us. And I'm passionate about our students because I realize that with our students, if we don't save them, if we don't help them, if we don't determine what they need and meet those needs, that there aren't a lot of choices out there. And I want them to have lots of choices, and I want those choices to be good choices. I want them to be successful, and I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with The Pursuit of Happiness, the movie. It's my favorite movie. I show it to my staff every year at the beginning of the year. My favorite scene is where Chris receives the job after completing the internship. And the guy that's hiring asks him, was it as easy as it looked? And he says no. And then afterwards you see him, it sets in, and he realizes that he's made it. He's finally made it. All of his hard work paid off. I want that for each and every one of my students. And thinking about that and imagining that for them every day is what keeps me going. And I think just as all of you do, I know so many people who wake up and go to work and they hate their jobs. They dread going to work. I wake up every day and look forward to going to work. I look forward to what's going to happen that day. I look forward to the successes of my students. I look forward to seeing them come back and tell me how well they've done. And I can't imagine doing anything else. I always say, everywhere I go, I have the best job. There is not a better job. I get to save lives. I get to help people find out what they're supposed to do, their mission, their purpose, and I can't imagine anything being better than that.
Mike Passy, that's great. Okay, so thanks for sharing some of your passions. The other thing that I've got a chance to hear from each of you, either directly or indirectly, is that you guys have a lot of vision for your school. And I think that's a really important piece of this whole conversation is what's the vision for the school, and the principal gets to kind of set that tone. And I just want to hear if you guys would articulate kind of, not your vision statement, but what is it that you want to see your school be in 10 or 20 years? What's the success of your school long term? Because that's what we want to encourage to happen. How do we add value to that, as was said in the video? So I'll let you guys kind of just articulate that as you'd like to.
We'll switch it up. Oh, sure, absolutely. My vision is that every single one of my students would not only leave with a diploma, but they would leave with job skills, and they would have a job offer. Regardless of whether or not they plan on going on to college, they would have a good job that would allow them, would afford them to be able to go to college and stay in college and provide for their families. Or if they choose not to go to college or change their minds, as so many people do, I would want them to have a job and have the skills to get that job to where they can move up, that it wouldn't just be a stagnant situation, but that they could move up and they would achieve more. I want all of our students to be connected to people in the community. I think so many, if I were to ask everybody in the room here, how many of you got your first job because you knew someone or somebody in your family knew somebody? Well, my kids, unfortunately, they don't have those connections. I want them to leave knowing somebody that they can go to. I want them to leave knowing somebody that will help them with interview skills, or say, hey, I worked in that, I was in that line of work for years, and this is what they're looking for. I can help you with that. That's what I want, and I want all of my students to have the pursuit of happiness.
I started out as a high school teacher, so I would echo almost everything that Christine said about networking and not understanding systems and how to do things in the community to help themselves. And I think a lot of our students at Glenwood are in that very situation. I feel like the vision of our school is to have the very best and the most committed teachers that we can have to deliver the most innovative instruction to our students to help them develop perseverance to a task. And something that's really challenging is when you're in an environment with 20 years of perpetual, what the State Department would call school failure, and you're trying to turn that around, not just for the kids at Glenwood, but for the whole neighborhood, so the whole neighborhood can feel the success of the children in our school. And I'll just give you, one of those things that I'm super passionate about is the A to F system in Indiana, because of how it makes communities feel about their local school, their neighborhood school, and also it's a very dense conversation. And to sum it up in a few minutes, 6 years ago when I came to Glenwood, there had been 10 administrators in the 10 years before me. So I'll be starting my 7th year at Glenwood with my assistant principal, and that in itself, bringing that stability to an environment is so powerful. And the State Department's attitude about public schools at that point was, and I know Henderson might be a little different, we're going to go in every 3 years and we're going to fire everybody that works in all these schools because they're clearly not committed enough to get the job done, and that's certainly not what was happening. Since I've been at Glenwood in that 6 years, our school started out on the top 10 watch list for the State Department and has moved up to having 115 schools performing below it. Now, I need to be honest with you, I'm not a person who measures myself by being at the bottom. That's not how I do things. So when I got the news that we were on the state's top 10 watch list, I didn't even care what order we were in. I couldn't go back and say to you, well, we're number 8, or who were the most failing school in Indiana. I actually think there were 2 schools in Indy that were below us, and we were number 8. I thought, this is not possible, and immediately we began to try to transform that. There are 115 schools performing below us in English and math now, and there's absolutely no way to show that measurement to the city. And that is so sad. To be, if you're in the bottom 10% of the schools or you're in the 55th percentile, you're still an F. And that's not how we should be measuring children. And I want you to remember that's measured on how they feel during a week while they take a test. It's one test, one system. High schools are not measured on that. I want every one of you to go and Google tonight the grades for the local school system, and I want to ask you this question. How could there be so many pervasively failing K-5, 6, 8 environments that are feeding high schools that are A's, B's, and C's? It's because the metrics are different. And it's a powerful way to send a message to communities that they're not good.
I think the vision at South Heights is just kind of building collaborations of people that believe what we believe about our students, that given the right support system, every single student can prosper, and kind of putting these collaborations into a model from conception. We haven't figured that out yet, all the way to career. And when we talk career, we're talking about either crossing the stage as a college graduate or crossing the stage as a technical school graduate, because we feel like that gives them their best guarantee of escaping poverty. And we've taken a big step forward in with our work and auditing kids on.
Just one comment, excuse me, from a church standpoint that I mentioned even in the video as we were working with Rob. Typically, after I've just crossed my 30 years of church ministry, we typically get around the table at church and say, let's do this for a school. We typically plot and plan from our office out, from our place out. The thing that we did different, and I did this because of ignorance, so I wish I could tell you I had an amazing strategy, but I basically, the guys that were at our Henderson campus said, let's serve the east end of Henderson, and then they said South Heights is in the east end, And we invited Rob over to our place to have a conversation and tell him all the things we were going to do for him. Well, he brought a PowerPoint of his vision for the school. I still have that PowerPoint from 7 years ago. And he made a presentation on his dream for that school. And honestly, we never told him anything about what we had in mind. The core part was, again, it wasn't our genius, but the core part was we listened, and we spent the last 7 years just joining that dream and figuring out how to add value to what Rob and his team want to accomplish in that school.
So, just as you guys have kind of your unique yet similar visions, how do you envision churches kind of best helping you achieve those visions? Maybe just speak into what has worked in the past, or what you would hope for it to look like. I know you've thought a little bit about it and maybe have some experience too, but just to help us understand what that could look like.
Okay, we'll finish up again. We've been through a series of partners across the 6 years, and the most consistent one has been our partnership with Crossroads. And I would say that for our school, the very same thing is true that you mentioned. They listen to what the needs are, and the relationships and the things that they do for the school are organic and grow out of their conversations with teachers and children. And that's the most powerful partnership that you can have, and it's the most powerful way that you can help each other, is that I as principal do not see the challenge of every teacher, and I as principal cannot see the challenge of every child, but Crossroads is an ever-present part of the school, and they come to our events. And I would say the same thing about our members of Zion. They come to things and they engage themselves in our community. They learn about our children, they learn about our families, and they find the intersecting points that they're passionate about to help. And I'll give this one example, but there are so many, I can't even talk about them all. It has to do with third grade, and we had these very poor third grade reading tests. 4 years ago, there were 42% of our students were passing iRead the first time. And another challenge at Glenwood over time is that at the end of this summer, in 6 years, I will have hired 98 teachers for 40 teaching positions. And that's because this work is very challenging. It takes a toll on you, it takes a toll on your family. Some people that we hire are cut out for it, some people that we hire are not. And we were having trouble getting the right team into third grade. A specific member of Crossroads congregation said, I feel really passionate about this, I want to get some of my friends together, we're going to come in and we're going to support these teachers, and we're going to tutor the children that the teachers identified needing extra support. The teachers prepared things for the tutors to do. These were not all teacher-educated kinds of folks, they were just folks who wanted to help. And they came in and they sat with our kids and they began to learn our teachers, and all of a sudden one of those people now comes back and does bulletin boards in our building because she realizes that teachers often don't have time for those little things, and she absolutely loves to do it. So she does all of the bulletin boards for a certain group of our staff, and the building's more beautiful because of her. Over time, over the last 4 years, not just because of the partnership with the tutors, but certainly that being part of it, we got some consistency with the teaching staff. They developed relationships with these people that they felt were supporting them. And since then, our scores have risen from 42% on that iRead test to this year being 74% first time pass. I appreciate that. I'm going to go back and give that love to the teachers because they're the ones that put the hard work in and the heavy lifting to get those results. But it was absolutely a synergy around what we were doing around third grade that led to that, and the hard work of the kids and the hard work of the teachers and the hard work of those volunteers. We're very proud of that. For Glenwood, when that becomes public, which is not currently public information, so if you're a reporter in the room, please don't write anything about that because I don't want to be in trouble. But we are pervasively dead last on the results for anything, or we trade that designation with one of our sister schools, which I won't name. And this year, when you see the results for our iRead, I want you to think about that relationship with those tutors, because out of 22 tested environments in third grade, Glenwood will be 12th.
I can't mention enough about how important it is to listen. We have a partnership with Oak Hill Baptist Church, and they are just incredible. and they've been with us all 8 years. But the first couple of years, we were trying to figure things out. And I think anytime, whether you have a friendship or whatever kind of relationship you have to figure things out. And we had never established a relationship before, so the first couple of years we were just, well, maybe this or maybe that, and they had some ideas and we had some ideas. But now it's evolved to where, we have them come to our site council meetings, and so they hear all of our needs. Pastor Brian was awesome one time, and he said, hey, let's sit down and let's look at your school improvement plan, and let's see if those are the things that you are working on as a school. Let's see how we can also work on those things. And I thought that was really beneficial and seemed quite obvious, but it didn't cross my mind to say, hey, this is what we're trying to improve, and do you know how, do you have any ideas on how we can help with that? They've been wonderful in providing mentors, and mentors get kind of tricky, but when you have good mentors and you have the consistency of people coming in every week, I cannot say enough about the power of one. It certainly makes a difference. We just had a CNA test yesterday for the state boards at our school, which is something that's really big, where students can become certified nursing assistants, make $20 an hour, go on and go to nursing school. It's fabulous. But we had a student there that's living in foster care, and one of our staff members had called her that day and wished her luck. And she was sharing that out with one of our other students, and that student said, I wish I had somebody like that. I wish I had someone that called and encouraged me and wished me good luck today. And it broke my heart that he needed that and that we didn't provide that for him, something so simple. And what is it that a lot of us get from our families or from our friends or from our teachers, those affirmations, that encouragement. It's totally free. It doesn't cost any money, and it takes very little of your time, but it means so much. And our kids are depleted of hope. They are absolutely void of hope, and they don't believe. How can you go to school every day and believe that you're going to graduate 4 years from now? You do this, this, and this. You take all these tests, you pass these state tests, you pass ISTEP, and then maybe you'll get a diploma. You go to school 4 more years, and maybe you'll have a college degree, or really go maybe 6 or 7 more years. And if you can get all this done, then maybe you'll have a decent job and you'll make a good living. It's really hard to believe that you can do all that when you don't have someone behind you telling you, you can do this, you've got this, you're going to do this, and I'm going to be right here with you. And I think that, to me, is one of the most important things that we could get from our church communities, is to have people in our schools, because we just cannot have enough. Our teachers are overloaded, and they do obviously do that. I had teachers calling yesterday, but it's hard for them to teach, to encourage, to always be there, to get the grading done, everything else that they have to do and that they're required to do. And it would be awesome to have more of that. And I know when we've had the mentorships and it's consistent, it really does. Our kids look forward to it. I have a young man, every Thursday, he's like, I'm having lunch with Brian today. Brian's coming in to have lunch with me. He's like, I know. And if there's a snow day, he's like, do you think he could come in? Do you think he could come in on Monday since we had a snow day on Thursday? I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. But they really look forward to having that, and it's so important. Something else that I think that I would like to see in the future is that all of your churches have so many wonderful, talented people who are talented at different things, whether it's gardening, whether it's doing drywall, whether it's doing flooring, working on cars. They know how to do something. And it would be awesome if those skills could be shared with our kids, just like parents or your grandparents maybe shared with you and taught you how to service your own car to save your money. Even if it doesn't become their job, how beneficial would it be if our kids could do some of those basic things on their homes or on their cars so that they didn't have to pay so much money to other people? And what a great partnership when you can come together and work on something together and see it through to the end. What a great experience that is, and that accomplishment, and how good that feels.
Those are some good answers. So I'll just kind of, first of all, congratulations. That's awesome. And I guess my answer 7 years ago would be, I'll say this, I think One Life did it masterfully with us, is I think they were just relationship builders. They just came in and started building relationships, and I think they would, come in for an event, maybe leave, wonder if they were going to come back, point. They came back, and they would keep coming back, and then out of those relationships, like we said in the video, they just started seeing areas that they had some expertise in, and they offered it up, and they helped us get things done, and we came together and understood that there was a real genuine mission of serving our kids, and that's where we unified, a mission of serving kids. I would say now, now my answer is kind of evolved, and Bob's helped me evolve it. It's very similar to hers. Every principal has about 5 or 10 kids in their school that are high-need kids. If we want to talk about trauma or ACE scores, or just kids that come from very challenging environments. I think initially, churches could come in and wrap themselves around one kid, and we're seeing that at the Allegheny Kids Zone with mentorship. The power of moving one kid and sticking with them is tremendous, and potentially is maybe the only thing that can save them. So it's not that daunting when you think about, hey, let's put it around this one kid, and when you start seeing some movement, it can expand.
Can you talk about that one kid?
Yeah, the one thing that strikes me about all this is I think for some reason we are slow to engage as churches because we think we can't afford it. And this isn't money at all. In fact, it has nothing to do with money. You can engage for free. Over time, some resources can go towards it, but it's not about finances in this case. It's about time. And one of the greatest things that Pat and Eric Cummings and others have taught me about neighborhood development is go time, not just money. It is about staying power. And Rob made a comment just then that I have run into several times, that we have a little bit of a history of churches of touchdown serving schools, but not engaging. Rob said, are they going to come back? And that is folks. And if I'm talking to the club of churches in the room, if you go and engage and be players. We've just kind of reached, and this is an interesting journey because we've actually now formed another nonprofit out of the school that Rob's in charge of, that we collaborate with, called the Auburn Kids Zone, and so we've heard about it. But at the end of the day, it's about kid by kid, house by house, and block by block. And the intriguing thing to me that we fight all the time is bigness. We always are going to programming, we're always going to largeness, and when I hear conversations, it's about, we need a reading program, or we need this, and those are all valid. What we've done is we've come back because of the kind of the ambiance of South Heights and Rob's value, is we've said, okay, let's take Susie and let's go deep in her life, her family, her home, her house, her block, and let's figure out how to solve the problems of Susie. And right now, we've built around this Auburn Kids Zone idea. We're working with 35 kids that we're going deep. We know their families. We know everything about them. We do RTIs. We call them community RTIs around that kid and that family, with the hope that in time we can scale that to the entire school of the hundreds. But we just took a zone in that neighborhood and said, what does it look like to look at academics and look at behavior? But what we know is their scores may go down, but that may not be a tutoring issue. It may be dad just went to jail, or it may be that they've got housing problems, there's a hole in the front door, or whatever they're going through. And so we've gotten very specific about kid by kid and what that looks like, and we're having conversations, and I can't tell you what a fight that is, because you always want to say, what we need is this. And the reality of it is we're trying to let Susie drive what that need is. And we know if there's 5 Susies that need reading help, then that's a reading program. But it's not a reading program to serve the Susies. We start and it's a bottom-up mentality. And that has been the most interesting journey to me, to look at a face, to look at the needs, and to literally say, and we now have scores from our first semester of doing this, where we have moved those 35 kids, some an entire grade level, forward, because we've gotten very specific about school, about after school, about activities, about home, about food, about clothes, about all those things wrapped around the students. So kid by kid, house by house, block by block is really our passion when it comes to working with the next generation.
I want to talk a little bit about the relational side of things. In the videos I've seen, Tamara and Rob, you both are hugging kids as they come in, high-fiving them, and it seems like in today's culture that's like a a surprise. And I want you guys to talk about why you do that, why it's okay. And then the second part of the question is relational as well. Is, what would it take for leadership at a church to build relationships with principals? Maybe speak to how it would work with you, but also your counterparts in other schools. What are some key tips or strategies that might be a good way to build a really deep and trusting relationship with the leader in the school?
Why do we hug? It's what I do to my own kids. And the whole idea, don't, I say in the video, don't make the simple hard. There's value in hugging, there's chemicals released, there's love exchange. And you saw very few hugs in that video. Really, it happens a lot. We had one day, because we believe in oxytocin and the power of it, we had one day where we guaranteed every kid would get hugged. And so, again, it's what we feel, whatever's good for our own biological children, we're going to make sure our kids at school get that, because then that just raises them up. So.
Well, we do that every morning. It's for the very reason Rob just talked about. We stand at the door and we high five and hug every child that comes through the door. And it's because I want them to feel like when they come to school, it's the most amazing place they could ever be, and that should be the place they want to be all the time. So we try to honor that and start every morning that way. And I can't tell you the number of times that we've had a principal meeting or we've had something going on where I will call ahead and say, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, because I don't want to miss that either. It does something for me in the morning to start my day with the love of children and just to know they're so excited to engage with me in the morning. It gives me that opportunity to make sure if somebody had a bad day yesterday that I get to touch base with them before they enter the building and say, hey Ross, I know today is going to be an awesome day for you. And then I'm going to walk down to the room an hour later and check on Ross and make sure he's doing okay. The second part of your question, and I think every person in your building has to feel like that. They feel like they want to give love to kids and they can't be afraid that someone's going to say, oh, she just touched him. You got to touch people. It's how you show love to them. The second part of that is, how do you engage with the principal and how do you start a relationship? And again, I think that's, sometimes organic and sometimes it's forced. And, principals are people that we don't realize that we're intimidating to other people. So when folks come to meet us, we're not thinking, oh, we're an intimidating person because we have a big office or because we're the principal of the school. And it's something I've had to learn about the role because I don't feel like I'm intimidating and sometimes I'm intimidated. And people don't know that. And so the first time I went to a community meeting at Crossroads, I was in a room full of their members. It was my first time to ever be in their church. And it was a very powerful meeting about the ways that they could engage and support our kids. And at the end of that time, they all prayed for me. And when they did, they put their hands on my back, the two people who were next to me and everybody else was chained up in prayer with their hands out. And it was so incredibly powerful for me that I thought, I gotta go back next month because I'm gonna need that, And it's very unusual for me to talk about things that are this personal, but I need you to hear this part because you're here to engage in this way. When you get hired to do a job like this, it's a big job. It's so much bigger than all of us in this room, and you feel the power and exhaustion of that all day long, right? Every single day when you go to work. And when people say, how do you feel about working at Glenwood? I always say it's exhilarating and exhausting in the same breath all day long. And it is. There are highs, there are lows, there are ups, there are downs, there are successes, there are failures, and you feel them all. And I think that there's not very much that probably the three of us do for ourselves to help us manage that. And just in the first year, to have Sister Jane, I'm sure many of you know her, I didn't know Sister Jane until I started working at Glenwood, and every month Sister Jane would send me a note of encouragement. And it was very powerful for me as the school leader to feel like, as I was driving home at night, sometimes thinking, I don't know why Dr. Smith thought I was the person for this. I sometimes didn't have the answers, and I was trying to prioritize very big problems that we were having and figure out how to keep teachers and how to love children, and it was a lot. And each day I would get in that car and go home and I would think, okay, I can solve this problem tomorrow. And then next week we'll work on a different one, but today this is the problem I'm gonna solve. To be surrounded by the love of other people and know that folks believe in you and they're there to help you accomplish that mission, it was life-changing for me too.
Yeah, and I would agree. Even though we have high school kids, the power of saying their names in the morning and greeting them, and we give hugs to the high school students as well, or high fives. It is so important. And I know there was, we had one student when I first met him, I tapped him on the shoulder or something and said something, and he was like, "Don't touch me." And then it's amazing because within 3 months, he was coming up to me and giving me big hugs. And he graduated from our high school. And so even sometimes when people are resistant to that, I think it's important to keep in mind when people are resistant to any time you're trying to help them, that sometimes they just don't trust you and they're afraid and they don't know what your agenda is. And that would be my segue into the next thing, is just when you're developing partnerships, is to be very aware that people that you're working with, they've been disappointed numerous times. They've been disappointed, they've been let down by the people that were charged to love them the most. And if you haven't been in that situation, you have no idea what it feels like to be a child and to have the person that's supposed to protect you and to love you abandon you or hurt you, or both. And so it takes time. Our kids are resistant when they meet new people, they're resistant when they meet new teachers. I always tell the teachers, give it 6 weeks, give it a little bit of time. Now I've been there for 8 years. They come to the office. I don't have to call them to the office, they come up to the office. And they know that they're welcome. And a big thing about that, I think with making them feel comfortable, is making them feel safe. They know I'm never going to raise my voice to you. Even if you do something terrible, or even if you do something that I don't agree with, I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to persecute you, and I'm not going to abandon you. Whatever it is, whatever problem we have, we're in this together and we can work it out. And I think the mission of the churches is the same way. I think we fundamentally have the same goals. If you live in this community, our kids are more than likely, I know at least for us, our kids, they are the ones who are going to remain in this community. A lot of other kids, a lot of your kids or your siblings, they probably move away to other cities, but our kids tend to stay in this community. If we love them and if we care about them and if we let them know, I've got your back, we're in this together, I'm not going anywhere. You can push me away, but I'm still going to be back here tomorrow morning smiling at you, and when you need me, I'm here. And I think if we send that consistent message, and we work together, and we listen, and we know that there's a solution. I may not know it, and maybe you don't know it either, yet. But if we end every sentence with that word, yet, we provide hope, we teach our kids to have hope, and we teach them that maybe you don't have everything you want right now. Maybe things aren't the way that you would like for them to be, yet. But they will be. They will be because I'm here beside you, and I'm going to make sure that it happens.
Didn't answer the second part, I apologize. I think if you're approaching other principals, I think my best experience was with one wife. It was just really natural. It was about building relationships. They would just show up to things. So maybe go to things. And then when you go there enough, you'll find yourself and you're maybe standing in the back of a gym full of Christmas activities and you're talking to Brett about other stuff. And then you find that you got some commonality with this other stuff. So I'd say, let those relationships with other schools and principals just start out just like you would any other relationship. The other thing I want to add too is principals, and I know I can speak for me. I mean, we're all leadership junkies. I mean, we want, and some of the best PD I get is, when Brett gets to speak, and so in GLS and things like that. So I think you can get principals involved if you can offer them some of the leadership that's going on in your church every single day.
I would say part of the relationship between Rob and I, there's probably not 2 days go by when it text something about something that's going on or share or whatever. And that really comes down to the common mission. We have figured out where we're on mission together. It's not that we're just buddies and all that, although we're friends through this journey, but we're on mission together. And so that's just been part of the journey that has caused us to just communicate on a regular basis. And I love that where the Crossroads people prayed for you, because I'm just glad to hear Crossroads praise. But the other thing, I just have to share this. My wife is a walker, and she goes out and we live across from Harrison, and she would walk around Harrison and then started doing it with her sister. It became an every Thursday activity. And then she dawned on her one day, well, if I could walk around Harrison, why can't I? And they started prayer walking around Harrison. And it dawned on her one day, why can't I do that at other schools? And I knew this was happening since last spring. And this morning as I was leaving, I said, so how many schools have you guys prayer walked? And she said, since spring we've prayer walked 24 schools. And I just want a great reminder of, as we've seen all the shootings and things that have gone on, of just overcoming evil with good. And just God's presence and favor on our schools. And I have to give my wife those kudos for just processing that and just praying for these folks as they do a very hard job.
Well, I want to open up to you guys. Maybe you guys have some questions you'd like to ask. We got about 10 minutes for that, and then another 10 minutes we'll wrap up the day. But yeah, if you guys have a question, I'm going to ask you to speak loudly because this microphone is a little finicky. So, any questions you guys want to ask? Anybody up here? Otherwise, I got more.
Just a question about, you had, I forget what you called it, but you adopted, you called her Susie, and then went from there. Did you see any rejection from families as you did that?
Well, it's very important to note that we were working in the context of the school. So the school brought us to the table. Again, it was not us going to Susie. It was, we're sitting around the table. Schools do RTIs anyway. Now, RTI's response to intervention, where they're looking at kids that are underwater and have problems. And we signed off on confidentiality agreements and all those kinds of things because you're sharing some things in context. And so we just, we would look at a child through the eyes of the school. And then the question around the table became, okay, I know that this teacher can help with the academics, but Susie's, air conditioning's out. And so we somehow would come into that relationship, and it was just interesting more than once around that table. Now again, we talk about programs. Around that table, we talked about the fact that Susie's mom needed a job, that Susie's air conditioning was out, their water heater was broke, or whatever. Those came up in the context of Susie. And so we responded as opposed to we didn't go in and knock on the door and say, Susie, we're here. We responded to some needs that the school was identifying that we could help that family with. So it became a kid by kid, house by house. Yep.
I would add, just from the EVSC standpoint of this, that a lot of schools who have challenging environments or students who, to Rob's point, in the RTI model, there's this top tier 3, 5% of your kids that are just really struggling. It's the kids that they're identifying. We have what's called a school support team, and it's not RTI. Our RTI team is separate, but that data feeds the school support team, and it's where we talk about those 15 kids who are struggling the most. And it is an intersecting point if that was a place you wanted to be invited to come and listen and hear about some of those challenges. And then I think, to your point, there'd be some kind of a confidentiality thing we'd have to do for that, but it would be a great intersecting point for that kind of work.
What was that called?
School support team. Most Title I schools in Evansville have.
Can I add one thing to that? Just the power of it, because I do have one advantage. This is going to be my 22nd year as principal of South Heights Elementary. So I've been there a long time, and we would do what Bob was talking about with Susie. We've done it with several kids. We can't do it with all kids, but we've taken them, kids with incredibly tough stories, and we've surrounded them and supported them. And when they left for middle school, we didn't just say bye. We had a group of people that stuck with them. And now we're attending every one. They're like our little experimental kids. Every one of them, we've attended their college graduation. So it works. So if you flip one, you change your life.
I did want to recognize Patricia Weinzappel came today. She's with the administration of EVSC. And did you want to add anything?
No, I wonder if you all can speak to just looking at students from an asset mindset versus
Can you repeat the question?
Patricia said, could we speak to looking at kids from an asset mindset instead of a deficit mindset? So there's really two ways to approach the challenges that a child or a classroom or a school is having, and one of those is to look at the situation and say, these are the things that are lacking in this child, and the other way to look at it is say, these are this child's gifts. And we're gonna capitalize on those gifts to make things happen for them. Christine talked earlier about the challenges that children face and not having someone who's consistently in their corner. And I think when you look at kids from a deficit mindset, that's what they're used to. They already know what they can't do. Many of them can't read. Many of them can't please whoever they're going home to. Or in order to please whoever they're going home to, those gifts that they bring to the family are not the gifts they need to be successful in the classroom. And so really just, we call it asset mapping. We do it on our leadership team because the leadership team has different gifts. Our teams of teachers who work with various grade levels have different gifts. And if we identify the gifts of the teachers, the collaboration that they can bring to the table to support each other becomes really powerful. The same thing happens in a classroom. You start to look at the gifts of children and you say, you know, Edgar is really having trouble listening, but Edgar loves to be a leader. So I'm going to give Edgar a job every day to do to start class, because if not, I can't start class. And so you get this figured out, you know, where Edgar is a support to you as the classroom teacher instead of the other. And I think when you have that mindset about not just children, but everyone you interact with, you know, there's people in your neighborhood that get on your nerves, or, you know, folks that you work with that you think, that's just something I can't stand that that person does, but they do 10 things you love. And sometimes that's not the thing you're thinking about. And that's what looking at kids from an asset-based standpoint is. Do you guys want to?
Something else I'd like to add is I remember hearing a quote one time: when you feel helpless, help someone else, and it's the cure. And within our CNA program, there were so many students, when you talk about assets, where there were people that thought maybe they couldn't do it, maybe they thought that they couldn't do it. But the thing that our students have is resilience. They are strong. When I talk to them, when I speak to them, I tell them, you are the strongest people I've ever met. If I were to tell you some stories, I mean, we've had students that have just gone through horrific things, and the fact that they come back to school and that they don't give up, they are resilient. I know a lot of adults that have had great lives that are not as resilient as my students. And the other thing that they have is that compassion. They have the heart. When my CNA students go to their clinicals and they are taking care of the residents there, and they are doing it all. They're not just going there and watching somebody else do it, but they are bathing the residents. They are cleaning them up, whether they've gotten sick or whatever problems that they've had, and they're doing that, and they love that more than anything else in the program. They enjoy being in the class, but when they're working with the mannequins, it's not the same as when you're working with a human being. And when you have a human being that needs you, and they are depending on you, and for the first time in your life, you feel needed and you feel appreciated, it's so powerful. And our kids come back and they miss the residents, they love them, they have huge hearts. I would say that we have the most caring, resilient group of young men and women anywhere.
I think one thing when we talk about asset mindset, I think, you know, our point is our kids definitely, I mean, they're all born with innate assets. I mean, they're there. You know, the transformation at South Heights was about adults getting it right. You know, the kids were good. The kids were good. They were just waiting to be lifted. It was about adults getting their heads on right.
I could tell South Heights stories all day, but just one, excuse me, quick one. One of the things that South Heights does, K through 5, is every year they take kids on college tours. And, you know, at kindergarten, they go to wherever, and closer colleges, they go to UV, they go to USI, but every year, and I've gone on at least one or two of those tours, where these kids are just kind of walking around from inner city of Henderson, and just college is never enters their mind, except that they're casting a vision for their lives. Then first grade, they go to a larger college, second grade to another one, fifth grade, they go to UK, because Jesus goes to UK if you live in Kentucky. And so the bottom line is they go through this journey. But what's really cool is they're starting, because of Rob's longevity, they're starting to get kids that are at those colleges to help with the tours of the third graders when they come through, and that kid's able to say, I remember when I did this tour. And so just again, that reminding a kid of what they can be, what they could be, and what can happen if they stay on it. And I've heard kids ask Rob, now what do I have to get on this test to go to UK or to go to college at first grade? They just create that mindset.
Awesome. I want to show you guys a slide real quick, and then I'll let each of them have one final comment. I can make it work. I'll go back. There we go. This isn't the whole tri-state area, but just to give you guys an idea of how many schools and how many students. So if you add all these schools up, we've got 59 schools and almost 30,000 kids. And so what if every school in the tri-state had at least 3 long-term church partners? What would that do for our community, our city, these students, the future of our city? I think it's just an awesome question. And you guys are seeing kind of the impact of a church-school partnership. And so, there's Moore County, Posey County, Henderson County that's not even included in those numbers. And so there's plenty of schools that need a church. And it sounds like they would be happy to have more church partners than just 1 or 2. And so I just want to put that challenge out there, something to think about. What does this look like for your church? So I want to give you guys a chance to just, anything else that you haven't got to share that you had thought about that you wanted to make sure was communicated, or if you just want to reiterate something that's already been said for us to kind of take home, let you guys each have a couple minutes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for having me here today. I've learned just so much from being here, and it's so awesome to be in the room with people who have the same goals and want to make our kids better so that our community can be better. And I guess my final thought would be, if you ever want to save the world, come see me. I'd love to work with you on how we can do that. We've got lots of opportunities. Thank you.
I would echo Christine's appreciation for the invitation. Every principal loves to talk about their school and the things that are working. And, just please remember, we're protective of our environment. So if you approach a school and it's not the initial reaction that you're hoping, get us off our turf. Don't always come to the school, but sometimes make them come to you, because it's different when you're away from school, how you feel and talk about your building. The thing that I want you to walk away remembering is how powerful this is for Glenwood. The relationship that we have with both Zion and Crossroads, it's so powerful for children, and that's why we all do what we do. But it's not just powerful for children, it's powerful for the entire school community. It's powerful for the teachers, it's powerful for the leaders, the parents of the children that we work with. The relationship and how they feel about churches in our community has changed because of the dynamics of the way churches work with Glenwood. Of course, there's room for everyone. Every church community has gifts, and those gifts are different. And so that's something for you to think about as you start this journey. But don't walk away from this conversation in any way but feeling the power of you. Anything you choose to do, no matter how small, is something that's going to impact people. And together, all those acts are going to be big.
Thank you for having me here today. When my wife heard I was coming to speak to you guys, she gave me the look. What? So I heeded the look. I guess my final comment is, just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. If we waited for the perfect model to look at, to figure out our relationship, or permission to figure out our relationship, we may not be sitting here today. So if we get one shot at this, let's go big or go home.
And if I can, just from my church seat, I probably have studied as much as any of you church growth over the years, and ways to grow your church, and ways to, all the things you do to enlarge the impact of your church. And I've just been convinced in the last 6 or 7 years that at the end of the day, it really is about reaching out into your city. And we use this phrase, don't just use the city to build a great church, use the church to build a great city. And that mindset will create an environment at your church. It'll create an engagement. In fact, what we're reading nowadays is the new evangelism is engagement. It's not coming to your church, it's engaging in the city is the new evangelism, and allows you to touch a lot of lives, a lot of people. This idea of centered sets, I find myself working with all kinds of different denominations, but even different religions and non-religions and all of that, developing relationships. And it's not that I go knocking door to door, but it's that we're serving together side by side, we're getting to know each other. And I can proudly say we have several of the faculty now at South Heights that now attend One Life, and make it their home church, and we've just become friends in mission together. And I just want to say to church leaders, if you want to grow your church, go impact your city. And schools are just easy to connect to and make a difference.
Awesome, thank you guys. And you guys thank the panel for sharing.